Hi there, welcome back to Rhiella's Army of Dolls. And if you don't know it yet, I'm a doll collector. If you want to hear all about my doll collecting adventures and my collection that you can see all around me, make sure to subscribe to my channel. One of the biggest questions I ever get is, what led me to collecting dolls? What's my story? I've already touched on that a little bit when I did my presentation at the Malvern Doll Fair. I'll put a link to that video, so please go there if you haven't seen it. But today I'm going to tell you all about my whole journey. So did I have dolls as a child? Well, actually, no. I didn't have any. In fact, I was a really outdoorsy kid. I played in the mud, I climbed trees. I really didn't have much time for dolls. My sister, she did have dolls. She had some superstar Barbies, just like this one. She used to play with them with her friends. Very occasionally I would play as well, but I was a pretty destructive child. I was more likely to be cutting off their hair or drawing on them than anything that really aligns with doll collecting. Perhaps that did give me a bit of excitement and interest in dolls in future life. I don't know. It could have. The only thing I really would say that I collected was stuffed animals. I probably had about 50 of them that slept in bed with me. I just loved them. My favourite, I remember, was this stuffed gorilla that I got at the Melbourne Zoo one year with my parents, and it travelled with me everywhere. Unfortunately, I don't have any of my stuffed toys from my childhood. I really wish I did. But along with dolls, I have maintained a love of stuffed toys. One of my favourites nowadays is this gorgeous one called Tentacle Kitty, who I discovered probably about 10 years ago after I had baby, and I got obsessed with Kickstarter and I discovered Tentacle Kitty. I've been collecting them ever since because he's just so adorable, and I probably have about 50 of these now. When I was a teenager, I started sewing. I remember looking in op shops and trying to get hold of as many really cool 1970s patterns as I could because I was really into hippie clothing at the time, and I used to sew some really awesome stuff. I think that was one of the reasons why I started getting really into dolls, because sewing was a real passion for me, but I did find that buying the fabric and even just taking the time to sew an item for a person was pretty painstaking. So doing it for dolls was kind of a logical link. But I didn't start buying dolls then. I've been racking my brains for the first doll I ever had, and I saw this doll online and it jogged my memory, and I suddenly realized, yes, that's the doll I bought. And she was this Mattel Flavas Pippa doll. I remember really well her red top and her bralette underneath. And this pretty much dates exactly when I started collecting, because I remember how I got this doll now. She was reduced heavily as an end-of-line doll at my local newsagent, and I bought her. Now, having looked it up, I know that that would have been in 2003. So I was 20 at the time. So it's a pretty long time, but I kind of thought that I got my first doll a bit earlier than that. Turns out I was 20. I had another doll I got nearly at exactly the same time, and that was this gorgeous My Scene. I still think she's an incredibly beautiful doll. I remember having this dress here, which was one of my favorites at the time, and I used to dress on several different dolls, including this one here. So they would share a bit because each of them comes with two separate outfits. And again, this would have been in about 2003 that I got both of these dolls. Same reason, but these girls got me excited for the doll collecting world. I think it's really cool now in retrospect that I had a Flavas doll, because I didn't realize at the time that this doll was only produced for 1 year, and they really didn't gain a huge amount of popularity despite being pretty cool dolls within the Mattel world. These ones are articulated, whereas My Scene are obviously a bit more of a basic doll with a Barbie body. They have a fun face, and I like the sort of combination with My Scene of the idea of the slightly larger head like Bratz and the skinny body like a Barbie, but she's a bit sweeter faced than a Bratz doll. So I think she's really cute. Also like that she can of course share with any other Barbies. So can our Flavas. I'm not sure if the hip hop theme really sold this doll for Mattel. Maybe it wasn't the best idea, but nonetheless, she's pretty fun, and I'm glad to have found this doll again. My very first adult collector doll was an Alex by Madame Alexander. I think that was about 3 years after my acquisition of the My Scene and the Flavas. I was just breaking into it. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, was starting to do research about what was available, and I found this Alex doll. It wasn't this one. This is one of my current collection, and I adore her. The doll that I bought when I was in my early 20s was called Sedona. Now, I had a pretty much free choice of which doll to buy, and my sister and I were living together at the time, and we got together and we decided we were going to get a doll for our birthdays that year. We discovered the 16-inch fashion dolls because, we were young people doing a lot of research online, and I developed this bit of excitement for dolls and for dressing them and sewing for them. And so my sister, she chose Tyler Wentworth Rapture, and I chose Madame Alexander Alex Sedona. And when they arrived, the really surprising thing is I didn't love either doll. I actually had this sense of disappointment when I opened up Alex Sedona. I had seen the publicity photos and she just didn't wear the clothes as beautifully as I had hoped. I knew that she wasn't an articulated doll, not like this one, with a beautiful articulated body. And I thought I was okay with that because, most Barbies were not articulated. I'd seen that. I was fine with that. But actually, I felt that she was very rigid. She didn't pose well and the clothes didn't sit on her body very well. I'm kind of sorry about that because it took me another 15 years to get back into 16-inch fashion dolls. That doll did put me off. She didn't put me off dolls, but she put me off 16-inch fashion dolls. So what did I do? Well, I did what any young intrepid collector would do. I found new dolls to excite me. I got really excited by 12-inch Asian dolls. The two you see here are dolls I had in my early 20s who are still hugely nostalgic for me and who I absolutely love in my collection. So this one here is a Susie by R&D. I do have a nice long video all about Susie dolls if you want to go and explore more of her. This one here, she is Liquid Azure, and I bought this doll direct from R&D in Taiwan when she was being released. I absolutely loved how the Susie dolls had this amazing fantasy aesthetic, different hair colors, and all sorts of cool different stylings. I love this one with the belly button tattoo and piercing too. And I had a belly button piercing at the time, so she really rang true to me for my love of fantasy and some things about myself that I saw in her. This one here is a Takara Jenny, and again, she's a doll I had in my 20s. I did sell her, and so I've spent a long time looking for a new one. This one is a calendar girl. They were released for a while by Takara, where a particular release would come out each month of the year, and I just love this one's gothic Lolita styling. She also has an umbrella that really opens and these amazing rocking horseshoes. Such an adorable doll, but all of the Jennies are just such incredible detail for the price point. These dolls only cost about 4,000 yen each, which equates to around 30 US dollars or 40 Australian dollars. Amazing value. Susie's are a little bit more expensive, and I did find at the time, because I didn't have a lot of money, that it was hard for me to buy all the Susies as they came out, so I did have to really choose carefully, and I kind of wish now in retrospect that I just bought all of them, because again, they're another doll where I didn't realize she wouldn't have a particularly long lifespan, and I couldn't just go back and get more once she finished being produced. My online research also led me to start finding out about vintage dolls, and one of the ones who I really got excited by at that time was the Daisy doll by Mary Quant. She is a British doll. She's about 8 inches tall, so about the same size as Skipper, and she has all these amazing fashions from the era, in particular 1970s fashions. And the reason I started to get excited by these dolls at the time was, as I said, I was really into hippie clothes, really into the 1970s. I was making and wearing this type of clothing myself, and so finding a doll who really represented those things I loved really delighted me. This one here, I actually rerouted her with this orange hair at the time. She's one of my original dolls from my 20s who I've never let go of. I just love her, and the Daisy doll is still a big part of my collection. I have about 10 or 15 of these dolls and more of her fashions. Now, in my mid to late 20s, life changes happen, as they tend to. I moved house. I had to sell a lot of my items and rethink what was important to me. And I regret this time because, as I know, a lot of adult collectors make the same decision. I sold quite a few of my dolls. And now looking back on it, I really wish I hadn't, because some of the dolls I sold I haven't been able to get again, and they're really special to me. But I did that. When everything settled down, I had a new house, more space, I got interested in collecting again. But of course I got older as well, and I wasn't yet in a place where I wanted to revisit all my old collections. So I found new areas to research. And the one that I discovered was BJDs. The two companies I liked the most were Lati, who make this one here, this is Sophie, and also the Zoom company. The reason I liked both of those is the focus on fantasy dolls. So many of the Zoom dolls come as a blended human-animal hybrid, which I thought was really cool and exciting. And Lati makes all sorts of different fantasy skin tones that makes them really cool. This one here is grey, and she's meant to represent the Egyptian god Bastet. Now, interestingly, of all the dolls I've ever collected, BJDs are the ones I haven't been excited to go back to. And anyone out there who's a BJD collector, you're probably wondering, why would that be? Well, it's not that I have anything against BJDs. They're incredibly beautiful. But there were two things that I decided I didn't love about them. The first one is their posing. They're made to be incredibly posable, which they are. Their joints are more flexible than most dolls, but they're also more problematic. I tend to find that even a really well-strung BJD is rather clicky. They tend to fall over at unexpected times, and then they can break. And since they're made of resin, well, they do break, and it really reduces their value. The second thing I don't love about BJDs, not so much true of these ones, but when you start getting big ones, and I did have some really big 1/3 Zoom dolls, is that they're incredibly heavy. They're really difficult to pick up, and again, you're always worried about breaking them. And because they're so expensive, if you break them, it is a problem. And that last thing is also a problem for me. They were just a lot of money. And so I did find when I started to question my BJD collecting, I thought, well, if I sell one BJD, I can buy 5 other dolls. And that just felt more comfortable to me. When I sold them, the doll that I moved on to was actually the 18-inch doll, in particular American Girl. The biggest reason why I became really excited by these dolls was the great community for sewing for them. This particular doll, she's actually wearing some clothing that I sewed for 18-inch dolls probably about 15 years ago now, when I was really into these dolls. I loved sewing for them. They're great size, there are so many patterns out there, and they're quite easy because they don't have busts or particularly large hips, so the sizing is pretty straightforward for them. The problem that I had with sewing for American Girl dolls, I wanted to start selling online, and I thought, American Girl dolls, they're so popular, there are so many people out there sewing for them, I'll have no trouble, I'll make beautiful clothes, I'll be able to sell them. Well, I did make beautiful clothes, and I did sell some of them online, but I actually found that it was an incredibly difficult market to get into because there are so many people. I kind of didn't take into account the fact that more doesn't mean you're more likely to sell. It actually may mean it is harder for you to carve a place in that market. So I did sell some outfits, but I tended to sell them for a lot less than I thought they were worth because I had to find a way into the market, and the way was to be cheaper. As well as American Girl, I found several other 18-inch dolls who I really got excited by. My favorite, and one who's remained in my collection ever since, was the West Coast Kids dolls. These are another relatively rare doll who it's quite hard to find, but they are just so beautiful. The faces have a really hand-painted look. They have so much expression. I absolutely love these dolls. I have 2 of them, and they're dolls I don't plan to sell. Even though I don't collect 18-inch dolls anymore, I just think they're beautiful. And my combined interest in 18-inch dolls and vintage dolls also led me to find the Sasha doll. She's a little bit smaller, more like 16 inches tall, but she's got a similar body shape and style to the 18-inch dolls. And I find her a really charming doll, sort of halfway between a fashion doll and a rag doll look, with this kind of simplified expression, simplified features, but just somehow so beautiful. And I still have about 4 Sashas in my collection because I really think they are such a charming doll. As I found my American Girl sewing business kind of failing, I looked for a way to transition to think, okay, well, what didn't work? How can I make that work? And the doll that I decided upon was this adorable little 6-inch French doll from England called Pippa. I find her face one of the most charming ones out there. But also, when I researched her, I realized actually there's no gap in the market for someone selling American Girl dolls, but I think there's a gap in the market for someone selling clothes for Pippa and for her US counterpart called Dawn. There aren't many people doing it, and I don't think there's anyone doing it in the style that I love, which is historical and fantasy. And so I started sewing under the name of Rhiella's Random House for this little doll here, and I found I was right. People loved my outfits. They were unique and filled a gap that I had identified, and I had so much fun with it. I've made so many designs for this doll across the years. I love sewing for them when I have time. Unfortunately, working full-time alongside all my other hobbies means that I have less time for sewing these days, but I still really enjoy it and look forward to making more clothes for this adorable doll. As I was still excited by BJDs, one of the very last BJDs that I purchased was a Deva doll. This is my current Deva doll. She isn't the same one I had then. I regrettably did sell that doll as well when I decided to get out of BJDs. But when my passions reignited, I've started to go back and really fill those gaps in my collection of the dolls and items that was special to me at different times. Now, the interesting thing about the Deva doll is that she's what's called a fashion BJD. And that means she has all the dimensions and styling of a fashion doll. She comes complete as a full set. She isn't designed to be customized by the user, but she is nonetheless made of resin. She is strung like a BJD. She poses like a BJD, but she looks and displays like a fashion doll. And this 16-inch fashion BJD was my halfway point to collecting fashion dolls. I really loved her styling. I really loved the idea. I really loved her size. But I just didn't love the fact that she was a resin doll. She was heavy, she was breakable, she was expensive. And so I did sell these dolls, but they got me excited about the idea of a 16-inch fashion doll. And that's become the biggest part of my collection ever since. So my Deva doll was a gateway to me rediscovering, really, the Tonner dolls and the 16-inch Madame Alexander dolls, and along with them, Jean Marshall as well, who I hadn't collected when she was available in the 2000s, but she clearly held a lot of similarities. Some of my favorites here, I absolutely adore this pop art Sydney Chase. She has an incredible 60s dress and this adorable beehive style. She doesn't have the fully articulated body, but she's partially articulated. Really, it doesn't bother me that her wrists don't move. She's such a beautiful doll. She is definitely a keeper in my collection. This Jean Marshall is called Coral Kiss, and she's a pretty hard to find one. I do also have Caribbean Kiss in the blue, as I love the style of this doll. She's got the articulated arm body, which can be a little problematic with Jean Marshall because they do often develop yellowing over time. Luckily, this doll is pretty free from it. I adore the color of this dress, the style of it, and the earrings and hairstyle that go with this doll. She's such a beautiful example of a Jean Marshall and one of my favorites in my collection. It was about 10 years ago that I got really serious into collecting and started gathering back the dolls that I love, the nostalgic dolls that I've had through my youth, and also all these new ones who capture my attention and who just really excite me. They bring out such joy to get a new amazing doll, to be able to find the perfect outfit, to display a doll in the way that just makes the room lighter. I still love researching and finding out about new dolls, and I have so many different dolls in my collection now. You can see lots of them around me, and you can see lots of them on my videos. 12-inch dolls like Integrity Toys, JHD, the new D for Lucy, obviously Barbie, Monster High and Rainbow High. 16-inch dolls like Robert Tonner, Jean Marshall, Madame Alexander, the Summers and Fields dolls, and several fashion BJDs like Ficon, Mod's doll, Jamie Show, Kingdom doll, and now larger dolls like the Dolphy Dream, the Smart doll. I like those dolls because you get that wonderful size that's so fun to handle without the weight of the resin that BJD gives. I'm constantly excited by new dolls. I look forward to discovering them. And I love that putting things on YouTube is an outlet for my passion, so I can share that with everybody. And maybe you'd like to share share a bit of your collector journey or the dolls that make up your collection in the comments. You can also ask me if you'd like to see more of any of the dolls that I've talked about today. I'm very happy to make special videos about a particular part of my collection so that you can share my joy with me. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and I can't wait to have you back to share more of my doll collection.